We'll start the recording. Welcome. I hope you are well. Let me see if I
How about you?
doing okay. I can still barely hear you. Let me see. Let me see if I can fix that a little.
There's something I can do on my end, or
That's a
possibly my microphone isn't.
yeah. Well, that got a lot better. I think when you got closer to it, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. Now, oh, here's what I wanted to do. That's better. Okay, I want to get us into gallery view. All righty. So, um, let's see. One other. Okay, I think that's good. So, all right, we'll jump in. I'm going to share my screen here. Um, I think this one is the right one. What that is. All right. Now, are you seeing my SurvCE screen?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, I can't see it.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I am. I
Okay.
recognize it. Continue last job and select your
Yes.
existing job. Now I'm seeing your whole desktop.
Okay. Um, so you wait a minute. You only see this.
Yeah, then you've got your cursor on right now.
Let me stop that a minute and get a new. I'll share that. Now that you see everything, right?
No, it's still the same view. I'm seeing the Serve CE screen, and I'm seeing uh, that it's removing right now.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're seeing the desktop then. Yeah. So
And
you're not seeing my other screen that has the Zoom meeting and stuff on it, but
no, no,
you've got the old ruins and the
yes.
side and all that. Yeah. Okay. So you got the desktop. All right. Um, okay. Well, let's get started. Like I said, I've got things being recorded, and if we get things, if they look like they're getting sluggish on the transcripts, or I'll shut the video down and uh, we'll go from there. Uh, but otherwise, I think that'll be good. You can catch my attention easier, perhaps, if I can see that you're struggling or something aside. All right. So by this point, when you've been using um, your gear, I'm going to guess you've been, you've got, you know how to get the thing turned on and all that good stuff. So we won't belabor that point too much. But um, do want to go over a couple of concepts and sort of workflow things, Mike, that'll help um, keep this in track on track. So, uh, and again, are you just running yours on your data collector there? Do you have it in front of you?
I have it in front of me. Yeah, I
Okay.
haven't turned it on yet.
Okay. Well, feel free anytime to load that up. If you would rather, you could get that demonstrator. Did you download the files that I sent you?
Did I
Yeah.
demo them? I downloaded them.
Okay. There is a file in there called. Let me get to it.
And I don't have my data collector hooked up to the computer. Do I need to do that?
No, no, that's fine.
In fact, I've never had it hooked up to the computer. I always use the thumb drive to transfer data back and forth.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. Let's do this. If you, let me get to my Dropbox. Here it is. Um,
Okay, now I'm at the same screen that you are, where it's asking me to continue last job or select new existing job.
okay. All right. So we can do that. What I was going to suggest, Mike, if you downloaded those files, there should be. Did you get this SurvCE demo?
I think so. Yeah, I got an exe file. Yes.
Yeah. That what that is this thing you're seeing back here on my screen. And
Okay.
that's basically a demonstrator program that runs on your computer instead of on your data collector. That way you won't have to worry about transferring stuff or stepping on any of your files, that kind of thing. So feel free to use that if you will. But the other thing about using the data collector is that you're going to know where your buttons are, that sort of stuff. So
Let me open it up and see what it looks like.
okay. Now yours will, on first entry, it may look like uh, like this. You see how much smaller that is now for you to see on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not.
That's that little demo. If you run that exe, it should install it for you, and then you'll get, there's an icon that looks like this right here, like a hard hat. It says SurvCE demo.
Yeah. Okay. I have it. So I hit next,
Yeah.
and I accept the terms. Next.
Mm-hmm.
Destination folder, program files, install, finish. Okay, it's downloaded. Now where do I find it?
Probably on your desktop.
Okay, now I've got that.
Okay, and what does it say?
Well, it's confusing because I've got two. I've got you on one screen and it's trying to open up on the same screen.
Okay.
It's funny, it won't let me move it to the other screen.
Oh, you have to answer open last or start new first, and then you can move it.
Okay, what do I? Which one do I want to pick?
It doesn't matter. you say open last, I think it will just start a new one or whatever. So, yeah, and it won't hurt anything either way.
It still won't let me move it to the other screen.
Did you say
Yeah, it's letting me move it around on this
on
screen, but it
that
won't let me
screen?
move it to the other. I guess I could move you to the other screen.
Yeah,
See
anything's
how
fine.
that works.
All right. But anyway, what I would once you get this up and running like you have it, one of the things I want to show you is that you see how small mine is here, and that'll be that size by default on your screen as well. But if you want it larger, just for the purposes of not having to strain your eyes, if you choose this little helmet icon and then choose this next to the bottom one where it says Scale App UI, scale the application user interface.
Okay, I picked the helmet on the thing itself, and I go
Yeah,
to
the upper
scale
left,
what? Scale
scale,
app UI.
correct. And so I'm going to put mine up to a 2x, and it tells you you have to exit and come back in for it to take effect. So I'm going to do that. I'll exit, I'll come back in. Now you see how much larger it is?
Okay, what? How did you exit that? Oh, exit.
Yes.
Are you sure you want to exit? Hit yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, then how do I come back into it?
Double click
Sure.
that icon.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So
That's pretty big.
yeah, that should be easy enough on your eyes, and you won't have to worry about looking at your data collector or all that kind of stuff. Understanding, of course, that your data collector is going to have the ability to connect to a total station or a GPS unit, that sort of thing. All
Right.
right, now, um, one of the things I'd like to find out, I'm going to, uh, all right, when you run this up here, if you go down to this button, first of all, make sure you see these tabs across the top. Make sure you're on File, and then show me that number 9, About SurvCE.
Yeah.
And then,
How did you get that yes? What did you hit?
well, I hit this, and then I hit this
Okay.
information icon.
Yeah.
And that's, do I want to update with Carlson software registration database? That's not what I meant to hit. I don't particularly care. What I'm trying to find out, and I don't see, where they've taken it. It used to be under that button. Um, I wanted to find out your license level. Like, do you have the road stuff? Because I think we found out you did not have the GPS.
Right. Uh, I don't know. I don't know how to find that out.
Oh, okay. Actually, it's not going to work on this demonstrator. I just realized, of course, because it's not, this has the whole thing in it. If you look on your data collector, if you just pop it on real quick and run that,
Okay.
And then on the File tab, if you look at the About SurvCE,
Okay.
what does that show
Oh, it
you?
says TS on, GPS off, robotics on, roads off, hybrid off.
Okay, what was the very first one that you said?
TS.
Oh, total station. So
Yeah.
total station and robotics you have, but you did not get the GPS, nor did you get the road stuff.
Right.
Right. Okay. So those are additional modules that and licenses that you can buy. Um, did they explain that to you when you got when
No,
you?
I didn't buy it from Carlson. I bought it with Leica. It was part of the package that came from Leica when I bought the robot from them.
Okay.
Can you still hear me okay?
Yes, yes, I can. I was just thinking. So if you were, see what I was getting ready to, or what I would like you to think toward is nothing you have to do tomorrow or next week or next year, but you can run that Javad GPS unit right there on that data collector and freely mix and match it in with using the robot and using the total station. And even while the job is running, you can switch you can hot swap the instrument that is connected to the data collector and just keep your job open and running. And, let's say you're getting a bunch of nice, good GPS points with the rover, and then you have to stop and set up the total station because maybe you're in the woods or whatever, or you can't get in there with the stick and you got to shoot the robot. Then that lets you do all that and keep that same job open. Now, because you're running a completely separate data collection software package with the GPS unit, you're going to have these things you got to get out of the GPS unit, transfer to a text file and bring them in and import them into your points. Whereas the Carlson points you collect are going to just be, part of your point file, your CRD file.
Would I do that through Carlson rather than through Leica?
Possibly. You, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I would, wherever you've got that registered. I mean, that's something Mike could help you with as well. But,
I've got it registered through Carlson.
okay, then I'd just pick up the phone and tell him you want to get the GPS module, um, and do it. And I don't know what it's not, 250 or 500 or something like that. It's not a whole lot of money, but I forget what it is. Um, I just think it's going to be a lot more convenient for you, and it's going to be less of a struggle than having to merge those coordinate files. And now,
It would be, but I didn't realize that I could do that. I didn't realize that Javad would hook up to this.
yeah, yeah. So that's that. Well, you say it came with the Leica robot. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I
So
didn't tell Leica I was buying a Javad GPS.
right. So yeah, because they would have probably wanted you to buy a Leica unit for one.
Sure.
uh, so anyway, yeah. So now the other module that you don't have, you've got two there that are off. You've got the roading, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you've got the hybrid, um, which is something that's relatively new. In fact, I don't think there's anything in this little demonstrator that talks about that. Um, so what you need to do is let me do a quick something. Carlson. Uh, see if I can find out exactly what it is. Okay, let's see. All right, it says now offers the hybrid plus survey module to survey with both GPS and total station at the same time. All right, so that, yeah, that they're calling it hybrid now. And yours says it's not on. All right, so back on this is about SurvCE. It says the first, it says TS is on, right? On the data
Yeah,
collector.
yeah,
Okay.
TS is on.
So TS
GPS
is
is
on.
off.
I'm saying, what's the next one?
GPS is off.
Okay.
Robotics is on. Roads is off. Hybrid is off.
All right. So when you talk to Carlson, phone and call them. Don't just try to do it on a website. But when you talk to them, find out, because I don't know the answer to this. As do you need both GPS and hybrid? I don't think so. I think all you need is the GPS module. But tell them what it is you have and that you want to do. That you want to use that data collector to also switch to using your GPS. The hybrid, from what it was saying that I just looked up, it says it allows you to use them at the same time.
I think
Wait,
that's where you have you have your GPS antenna also on your prison pole, and you can do both at the same time.
oh,
It also helps the robot track you because it's tracking the GPS unit that's on your pole.
okay, all right.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yeah, but but you would need the GPS module to be able to run the Javad unit. Um, and again, when you're running the job, um, and I'm going to go ahead and return to this, you're just going to switch up here and switch between, say, total station. Oh, there's the hybrid. Okay. And then the GPS. If you do the hybrid plus, you'd have to have the separate instruments done. So anyway, find out from Carlson whether you need them both or if you just need GPS. I think if you're just switching between the two, you can keep the job file running. Um, but if it's, anyway, talk to them about it, Mike. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about that. I've never had hardware to be able to test it with, and I haven't, it's, since I've back when I worked with Carlson directly, we had hardware that I could use and teach with, but now, um, we're limited to this. So,
They were finished with my actual data collector.
pardon?
I was finished with my actual data collector, if so, I'll turn it off.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry. So, um, but yeah, so what so what they would do is they would basically when you get those new modules, um, they'll send you to a website called if they haven't changed this, yeah, it's called SurvCE.com, and that's where you would come down. Um, so you can get this upgrade to the latest version of SurvCE. There's a fast survey upgrade, whatever that is. There's this listen, which is a radio thing. If you buy that, if you bought your hardware from Carlson, you won't need to worry about that. Um, there's an Esri OEM engine, which lets you track GIS uh, features and data as you're collecting that sort of thing. So um, anyway, that's a resource. It's not really directly findable from Carlson's main website, but the web address is just survce.com. And it's got things like the manual. You can switch to the different various versions. If you go to the download button, you see they've got, um, and that basically takes you to the various Carlson software downloads that make sense in this data collection field. See, there's not, you get the Carlson SurvCE embedded AutoCAD, Carlson iCAD. There's, trying to find the desktop products, but anyway, it's basically their software stuff. The CSI, for instance, is the crime scene investigation. It's essentially the same thing, but it has field code set up so you can say, okay, this is the start of say it's a car accident. Um, this is the start of a skid mark, and then this next point over here is the crash site. Or, here I'm going to shoot this spot on the wall. That's a bullet hole. Over here's, where something else happened. It's geared toward police departments. But anyway, so all of this has these different ones. Here's the six. I guess it's up to version 6.06. With release notes and such like that. So that will be one of the things that they should point you to, or you should also be aware of it as well. And it's sort of a sister website to Carlson. It's not really their direct. You can get back to them if I click up here in the Carlson logo, I can find it. So, so that's a resource for you. But let's get back to the basics of this thing and understand what we have going on here. And so once you turn that system on your data collector, you're going to get this guy up that you're probably becoming familiar with. A couple of things. Across the top, there are some icons, some text, and these things have different things, and they have certain meanings within certain contexts. If you click on the construction hard hat in the upper left, that brings up a menu of things that you can do sort of on the fly. This is like your Cortana button or your start button on your desktop on your Windows machine. It just brings up some things. Some of them are shortcuts into things that you can also get into from these other routines in the main interface. For instance, if I pick this up and hit calculator, now I have other areas in the other places in the software, say under the Kogo menu. That's my computer coordinate geometry, and I've got a calculator button right here. Okay. So that's the very same thing as pulling this down and choosing calculator. Okay, so now there's a help system, and if you go ahead and choose it, you see what it says, help not available. It says load from Carlson knowledge base. So then if you go to this website, search for this topic number, and they'll download, or you will download from that a help system that looks like this. And I didn't install it on this version. This is the previous version. I'll show you what it looks like. So if I go to help, okay, so if it brings this up, if I look at, all right, my user interface, here's my quick calculator, it shows me all this stuff about it. I go back to my contents. I can say, well, what do I do if I want to store points with my total station? I'll click that, and it tells me all that stuff. This is the help system. It's also what you would get in the user manual, and just everything printed out and showing it to you there as you go along. And it keeps it handy on the data collector in the field if you should want it. I don't really bother with it anymore because once I think you know how the system works, once you understand that workflow, um, you know, there's, and some people had sort of didn't want to take up the storage on the data collector to hold all the help files, although you've got plenty of room either way. But when I'm going to go ahead and exit that version. But if you try to run it here from this one, and it tells you that you should load from this, the knowledge base from their website, topic 475. There's instructions there, and they tell you how to do it, and you have to get that set of help files onto your data collector, transfer with a thumb drive or a cable connect or a Bluetooth connect, and you can set it up so that you can have the help system on the data collector out in the field, okay? In fact, if you ever get to where you want to do that, need some help with it and the physicality of getting in the right spot, we can do that, later on outside of class, okay? Now, once you're in a particular screen, you see these things will change, and they'll do different functions. And you're going to see things like, see if I go to here, for instance, well, it's going to just switch that. Let me look at, yeah. So when you're looking at a particular screen with some other information on it, and you're into a subscreen, you've got these controls in the upper strip of the data collector and on this one as well. It's information for you. You've got some things, there's my text that says I've got 33 points. The largest number is 0.5004. I've obviously got some gaps. But I've got these other buttons. There's that one there with the folder and the magnifying glass that gives me some further information, lets me look a little deeper, if you will. That's my point report. And that's basically telling me about my point file, my highest point number, used points, number of points. Here's my unused points. Those are the ranges that I have that are unused, and then the total number. Now, usually when you don't have to make a choice on a screen, if you just want to go back, there's typically a brown or orange arrow. That's what I was showing you there with that one. Okay. The other guide with the toolbar is generally when you see the crossed tools, that's more like a setting. That's a toolbar or toolbox. And when that comes up, this is where you make some changes, and you either need to say, just like on a Windows dialog box where you see the OK and cancel, you're going to see these. There'll be a green check box, that's your OK. The red X is your cancel. Okay, so I could, change this to say, 5, and as long as I hit that red X, it won't record that change, but if I hit the green check, it will. Right. So again, now there's that orange return. So if I click that, I'm going to come back to my main screen, which looks like the different tabs. Okay. And then this icon right here tells you at a glance what instrument you've got running. This icon that shows the instrument tells you which one you've got. And you notice this one changes to keep up. This little guy right here is, let's say I'm overdoing something here, and if I click that, and it doesn't really do anything. It just tells me I'm using that particular piece of equipment. So this also changes. So notice if I'm at my total station, See, that changes, and that changes as well. Why they gave you two, I don't know. That's relatively new to begin with anyway. Um, okay, so then, and of course the battery is the battery life, and it is actually an active button. You click on it, it gives you some details, and you can turn on the sound so that if it gets low, it'll beep at you. Okay. And this button right here,
I'm going to go back and do that again.
the globe in the upper right hand corner,
Yeah.
that basically takes you into the get this soon. So that takes you into the graphic mode of the software, which is like when you're running Carlson on the computer, that's your CAD system. Okay. And it has these menus: file, view, draw, also has some coordinate geometry tools, just like you do back in the main screen. And then these other tools like center lines, uh, profiles, traverse, uh, traverse defaults as to what you're being asked for here. Um, Oops, sorry, back to this. And then you can, image overlays. You could have aerial maps that are loaded on your data collector. You can use that to help you find field points, etc. Things from the web, an NGS control point query system. Okay, but some of those tools, like these centerline things, are good. Like if I've got a drawn polyline and I want to make a center line out of it, for instance, if I look at this right now, that's just a 2D polyline. Okay. If I let's see what else. Sanitary. Okay, that's the data. So, but if I wanted to turn that into a particular centerline file, I could say, give me a polyline to a centerline file. My instructions up here say select a polyline. So if I select that guy right there, I could give it stationing and blah, 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 save it as a centerline file. Now, this is just like in your Carlson survey on the data or on the computer. So now I've got a centerline file, and now I'll go ahead and cancel that. But once I have that as a file on this road tab, I can make edits. I can look at it. Here's one that's, see that same uh, center line, the same alignment, okay? And if I, okay, go to the next one, everything's looked at. Same thing with the editor. I can look at a profile and center lines and then draw the profile. And then I can also look at a roadway template, the cross-section template. So without going into all the details of each of these buttons here, that's what this road module does, and it's an optional module. So if you ever get into some work, say for the DOT, if you do a lot of that stuff and you're having to stake out roadways, and you're doing slope staking and you're going every 25 feet to stake an alignment, then you don't need to have all those points already on the data collector. All you need is the center line, the profile, and the cross section. And then as you go to do your stakeout, it will step you along all of those data structures at whatever interval you choose and tell you then where to go to okay, here's going to be the bottom of the slope, the top of the slope, because it knows the the grading information based on the profile. So it knows where you are and how much cut or fill you're going to have to use. So it's a really useful tool if you do a lot of roadway work.
I'm never doing roadway work.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. I just wanted to show it to you, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of effort on it, but that's where some of those tools are. And again, some of the utilities, you see these different conversions for the different things. And that's again what it's talking about from that Carlson's perspective, the way you do roads. You need center line, you need a profile, and you need a cross section or a template. Okay. So that's there, but that's another module, so we won't really waste any time there. Um, but I do think you're going to find some some real benefit in that GPS module to be able to use that Javad unit. Now, that being said, I don't know uh, much at all about the Javad unit and their data collector software. They may have some really great tools that that the Carlson stuff doesn't have, but I don't think so. I think they're basically allowing you to collect your points, and as you'll see when we start to get into some things. Excuse me a minute, I've got something fell back here. As we start to get into this and you see how the structure of this works, I mean, it's like saying that you can't do something in this system that you could in something else. Is like saying that, well, if you use, K&E field books instead of TopCon field books, you can't write down, it's collecting data is collecting data. You're recording a measurement or a reading from an instrument. And that's really what you're doing, but it's the tools that help you calculate things when you're out there in the field that might be slightly different. So there could be some really huge, I gotta have it, I can't get it anywhere else kind of thing that you can get from the Javad uh, collector, and you say it's right there on the it's on the receiver itself.
Yeah.
Is that right? So, uh, and maybe that's the convenience, as long as you understand when you come back into the office that you're going to have either a separate set of points or you're going to need to take those points and merge them into points that you get with the total station. Okay, so, um, whichever way that works. But I really do think that's going to be some benefit for you. All right. Now, so we've got some things to keep in mind. We got a little helmet guy. We've got this just showing you what instrument, and the job number or job name rather is at the top of the title. You got your battery, there's your return arrow, you got your hot swap instrument to switch back and forth to. And then you've got this little button that switches you from the map and puts you into the map mode. When you exit that map mode, that map mode is, you see it says right there, map view, then that is going to put us back into the main control where we do things through our tabs at the top. Now, this map view is slightly different from another thing that I wanted to show you, at least I used to have it over here, is if I'm doing my survey mode, and let's say I'm going to store this point. All right, so it's walking around my GPS, blah, 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 blah. Notice, see, let's get up there to it. All right, so, as I'm walking around out there on the ground, I'm getting ready to survey a point. You see, I'm looking at the picture of, what I've collected so far, all my different points and relationships. So I'm seeing all this in a graphical mode. Well, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that this is not the same thing as that map mode, that map view that we were looking at earlier. This is just a mode whereby I can see where I am. I'm in the process of storing points, as it says right up there. Now notice I now have, if I click the helmet here, see this guy right here that says text?
Yeah.
That puts me in this text screen. And there's some surveyors, that's all they ever use. They do not look at that map. They don't like to look at the map. They just want to see the point number, the rod height, and they'll type a description and they'll go. But on the data collector, if you click that, you can switch back and forth between um, again, they used to have it here. They had the little globe down here. That's why I wanted to show you the difference. And apparently they've cleaned up the confusion, so it's no longer on here. Oh no, I'm sorry. It is. It's all the way up the top. It used to be in the same spot down here, but that says map. And so when I click that, that actually does put me into the CAD system. I'll hit the return. And here's this text mode. But to get back to the graphic mode is this little guy right there. Okay, now why they took, um, here I've got the text button, and that text button is not available, for instance, if I'm just out here. There's no text down here. There's also no map up here. But if I'm doing something that could benefit from, say if I'm doing a store points, now I've got this map mode where I can, while I'm walking around getting ready to store a point, I can hit the map button, get into this, you know, do whatever I might need to do in the CAD. I'm putting air quotes around it in the CAD system. Return, it puts me back where I was. If I oops, sorry. No, that's me. Okay. Right. So, like I say, if I'm doing the survey and storing points, again, this is my, and I can tell, this is why it's so confusing. But like over here on the left-hand side, I've got all of these different zoom in and out, zoom window, point information kind of screens, the same ones that you have in the map mode. But I have these other buttons on the right-hand side that are uh, pictures of what it is I'm trying to do. This one says take the reading from this, in this case I have a GPS unit, and store that reading into my data collector. So you see that little picture there. My sigma over n, that means take a series of readings and get the average of them and take that. So wherever I happen to be, I may say, click that button. I tell it how many I want to use or how long I want to do it for. Ignore any invalids, display average assisted, blah, blah, blah. I hit my green button and you see it's taking the readings, it's recording those, comes back with those readings. And that's really all it did. That was as if I were to take a shot. Okay. Here's an offset, much like when you can't occupy the center of a tree trunk, it lets you shoot an offset. You know what that is. There's your configure, there's your gears, and down below is my sky plot uh, satellite configuration information. Okay, so all of these little things, this guy right here, for instance, lets me set I can preset a bunch of, like if I've got one of those quick lock uh, rover poles that's either at a 5.2 versus an 8.4, I can have those just preset and switch between them. Guess I better put that back. 5.2. Okay. This guy here, for instance, lets me go into gives me my fixed solution, and all of these different things are codes. I can take a picture. I don't have one here for it. Choose that button. I can pick them out of, here's all my codes. We'll talk about that a little bit later, what the codes are going to do. That gets into the field to finish. And then the different buttons over here. So all of the buttons, everything has, some kind of value or action, I should say, rather not value for those different buttons. And uh, so when I'm surveying, if I'm on this text screen and I want to see that, I have to come back to and not map. Okay, but map is that. So that globe, and when I'm surveying, that globe are the same thing. It puts me in the CAD system. Now that used to be the real point of confusion in the old versions, because when I was in this, you used to have to come back here, and instead of saying text, it said graph. So it had graphical view versus text view. So now, as long as you're at version, I forget when they switched that, maybe, let's see if version 5. Survey, store points. And yeah, okay, so they had already done it by version 5. And if I go back to that, yeah, there's text. Okay. All right, so that's not so much an issue, but just so if you ever get on your survey screens and you're seeing this and you want to see what it is, where you are in relation to your other points, understand that you need to go to switch to that different mode there, okay? And these buttons over here, these icons, can either be letters or they can be pictures. And the letters will be things, and I'll show you where that's stored here in a little bit. We're going to go through getting everything set up and ready to roll. But these are just the controls here. And because I've got a total state, or I've got a GPS unit and I'm in store points, it's basically when I hit that button or the OK button on the data collector, it's going to stop and take a reading. Okay. So if I switch, for instance, to my total station, and let's just switch to a manual total station, and I'm doing store points. Okay, that's off. I'm going to want, so that's backslash 2, just for yucks. Let's just put that. And let's try this thing. I'm going to start on 201, and I'll look at 202. All right. Um, on. All right, so now notice my my icons are slightly different. Okay, remember before I had I had this one up here at the top. That's my store point. That's take the observation, store it in the data collector. Now, because I've got a total station going, this says take the reading, and then once you hit the reading, there's your angle right, your vertical angle, slope distance. Then you can choose to store the point. This one is to sorry, it's trying to, can't really do it with that, but this one is to basically close that out from the instrument back to the observation. That's my closing observation. Here's my offset, and again my setup, and this tripod, that is the actual setup in terms of occupied backside point. Okay, I'm sitting on 201, I'm looking at 202, the backside. So that's what that one's for. But these other tools have these different settings that control how the software steps us through the different storing and measuring of the points. So these are going to change, and it's all going to be based on, I'll come back to this, which particular instrument we have connected to it. So I'm back to the GPS, and yeah, I know, fine. So now these are different. These are related to that GPS. Okay, so we'll get into that in a little bit and what they mean. But for now, we'll take a quick look. We'll run through what the tabs have and what they do. Is the file tab is much like another, kind of like a Windows program, as like the file menu and the job, and you go ahead and help yourself to playing around with all those different things. The job button lets me go out and choose a job, either a new one or an existing one. And when I say job, notice this pull down up here at the top where it says type. It's a CRD or a CRDB, that's a coordinate, or a binary coordinate file.
Really, that's the only choice you have, isn't it?
Yes, that's the only one you have. That's there in case this ever changes in the future. Plus, it's part of a standard file pick dialog. So anytime it asks you for a file, this is the operating system on the data collector, just like under Windows, when you've got that little pull down that says files of type, and sometimes you only have one type that's available. So that's there. But what I'm pointing at here is that a job in SurvCE, unlike when you're in Carlson SurvCE on the computer, the job in SurvCE is the coordinate file. Okay. On the computer, the job is the CAD file. It's the DWG file. Right. So, and again, because this is directly a Carlson CRD file, you don't have to do any conversions. You don't have to do, switch to a text mode and import and do converting like that. You can. It doesn't hurt anything, but there's no need to. It can read a Carlson coordinate file directly off the computer. You put it on the thumb drive and put it in, and you've got that set of points. Okay. Now, it doesn't know to bring the CAD stuff in that you might have in the office unless you save that CAD file and import it, that we've looked at a couple times already. But so that's what that one's for. Now, these buttons up here are, copy and paste, and that's like if I wanted to if I copy this and go up to another folder here, let's go say to my general folder, and if I say now paste, you would like to copy that file to this folder. So I'm going to say no. Where was I? Oh, that's where I was, I guess. All right. And again, all of these little things, they try to be descriptive in their picture as to what they do. Where it says drive, see that's the actual drive letter that your data collector is running. This means go up a folder. That means add a new folder. All right, so this button means to switch this view list type. This is show it to you as icons. I can't really.
When you, as opposed to hitting the up arrow, if you want to go in the other direction, how do you do that?
Like down into these.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go into this job and I'm just going to double click it. Okay, so now I'm down and it tells you right here on this stripe, tells you where you are. So now if I go up, notice it will say general. I'll go up again. I'm in testing one more time and I'm now into these, and you see there's my scroll bar. I can do it either with the arrows or I can drag this guy. Okay. And now I'll go into, say, this mining case studies, except there's no coordinate files in there, probably. I don't see any. All right, so let's go back to the last one, today's date. I don't have any in there, but in my survey class, let's look at this SurvCE. There's a TRS, new job, stake subdivision 2. So I'll bring that up. And so that's going to bring in that coordinate file. And oh, there's my survey, my subdivision that I'm going to be staking. Okay, so now everything you're looking at here was brought in once upon a time. And the first time it was open, it came in, it was just points. And then I did this import DWG and it brought all the line work in. And the reason I would want to do something like that is that, let's say I've got, say, this street intersection right here. And if I needed to stake that point right there where the two center lines intersect, I don't have a coordinate point there for me to go stake. I have to essentially calculate what that is or pick it from the graphics to be able to stake it. And that's one of the reasons that we want to be able to see those graphics, is that you can have it supply that coordinate for you. Okay? And if I look, I'm going to come back out of that map view and let's just look at my points. You see, I don't have any points in this file at all. Even though the job, see it says stake subdivision 2, the job button. See, it is a CRD file. It's a coordinate file, but it has 0 points in it. Okay. So let's look at the other now, stake subdivision. Now I see I got some points now. Okay, and that one is, as you can see, a bunch of points. Let me turn these point numbers off. Okay, so there are all the little X's. Now that's the same subdivision, but I didn't have the street center lines. I didn't have the bearings and distances on the line work. Okay. All I've got here is just a bunch of points, and I brought in the original lines to help me do that, to help me see where I'm going with it. Right? So the File tab, the Job button lets you choose different jobs. So I'm going to go back up to and find where it was. See if it's the same one. Yes. Okay. All right. So there's the job I had before. So again, that job button just picks the file. And now when I hit anything that asks for a file, whether I'm doing the job pick or if I'm loading a centerline file, anything like that, code tables, I'll see a file name down here that I can type in if I wanted. I can scroll, I can go up a folder or I can go down a folder. You do that by double clicking. You bring your way back out with the up folder. Um, Copy and paste. Again, the green check and the red X, that's your OK and cancel. It will tell you information on this line here as to where I am. It tells me at the top of the stripe what function I'm in. I'm looking for coordinate files, that sort of stuff. Okay. Now, the next buttons it's going to have on here are some things like job settings. If I were to click that, and we're going to go through that so that you understand where the behavior gets set. Okay, we'll come back into some depth with that in a minute or a little bit later. And then I've got the points. And the points is that all important list points kind of thing that if you have you played around much in Carlson Survey on the computer? Like, have you done a good bit of work in there as you're getting
I've
started?
done some. I wouldn't say a good bit.
Yeah. But what I'm going to guess is that you've probably used that function on the points menu called list points
Oh yeah.
a bunch. That's what this is. Okay. And that's like, that's the very first sort of command other than setup and choosing that you choose. And all you do is hit that button and it jumps you into that listing of points, which you can scroll through and find. If you double click a point, it brings up the point editor. Okay. Um, if there's no attributes, I've got them. See, this is a GIS data attribute. Again, you're not going to have that in your module that you have, and you don't need to worry about it. It's just being able to track additional GIS as opposed to GPS data. And I think the little example that I had set up was that I had put in a date. I wanted to always capture the date. And I think, well, the next one I've got are these utility types. It's a sanitary manhole, storm manhole, electric, water, or other. I think I went on and did some things like, um, condition assessment, uh, broken, poor, fair, good, new installation, that sort of stuff. Just extra things that you can control, and that's for an SMH code for a sewer manhole code. All right, so and again some point notes. All right, so again, OK and cancel. That's from a double click. You can also do a find. Now let me see if I've got a point here. So let's say I find 1005. So if I find, I'm going to call that 1005 and hit the enter button, it jumps me to that. Let's see something else. If I want to go to all right, so let's say I don't know. I'll give you a better example. All right, so now there's my points. All right, so well, even those. Crap. Let's see. Okay. All right, this will be better. So I've got, all right, so let's say, again, if I want to do a find, I've got some points that I want to look for, and I don't know the point number, so I'll clear that out. My point description, if I type, say, BLDG, that's a building, it will jump me down to the first one of my points with that description. If I wanted to find, say, a radius point, let's see, I think we have to do, let's see, COR. Okay, so COR I couldn't find, but there is a PCOR, property corner. So what I'm going to show you is that when I say find, if I could type in the P, or if I know that it's, I don't know whether it's got something else in there, I can put an asterisk in there in a COR, so it finds that. Okay. Now there's also some, there's radius points. All right, there's an EOP radius point, BDY radius point. So if I find, say, star rad star, that means it's going to go down to that next. So it can have anything or nothing in front of the RAD and then anything or nothing after it. So and I go find to the next one, I just hit enter, enter. That's point number 11. I'll find it again. Point number 59 and 61. So it steps you through each of those. You may also, instead of typing this in, you can choose from your list, okay, control points, road points, utility points. Um, and again, this is the field code manager. These are all empty things for now. So this would be, I can choose a description from the list of allowable descriptions. Now, if you're not going to be using a lot of, say, field to finish type of operations, you may or may not have this part set up. In which case, it's going to look, you'd have to type the response that you're looking for. But anytime you see a button like this, and that's really the only takeaway I want to leave you with on this one, is that when you see a button that has the letters and the little lines out from it, that means that's a list of things. That means you may choose from a list of things. For instance, and I'll go all the way back here and say, let's take points. You see that right there? Choose from a list. There's my list. This one is a picture of points, 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 and a pencil. That means choose from that map system. So that's going to go to this map. So I want to find a point. I want to turn on my Oh yes, there's a bunch of my points. So um, again, these buttons are, when you see that like 1, 2, 3 or ABC in a line, that means pick from the list. You see the dots and the pencils, that means pick points from the map. But you can also pick, let's see, my centerline editor. It's not what I want. There's one. Can't really find an example. Let's see if I'm going to stake a line or arc. It takes me straight to it. Well, anyway, what I'm, okay, can't, I don't have anything set up to show you. But anyway, what I'm getting to is you're going to see either this thing that looks like a list of options where you're going to pick from a list. You're going to see this icon, which shows the pencil and some points that are not connected to anything. That means you're going to pick a point from the map system, from the graphics system. You'll also see this, and you'll see drawn lines instead of the points. Okay, just looks like maybe contour lines that are drawn in there together. So that means it's going to put you over in the CAD system and have you pick one of the lines. So if whatever function it is that whatever command you're trying to do needs to work on a line, you'll see that one as well. Okay, so try to sort of get a sense of how the icons are trying to show you, graphically what it is that they're going to ask you for. So you see a bunch of points here without any lines connecting, then you know you're going to be grabbing points. You see numbers and lists. Again, you pick it from the list. Okay. So there's a couple of things that apply across the board. Again, those pick from buttons, either type it, and you can usually put in things like asterisks where you can, um, you know, put in wildcard text searching functions. Let's see if I've got, yeah, it's not, anyway. Um, but again, just follow what those uh, look like, what those icons are going to look like for you. Okay. So again, the file tab, each of these individual tabs is going to uh, be part of, of your process. The first two, job lets you choose a job, either start a new one or choose an existing. The job settings are where you're going to set things up, um, set some behavior of the way it asks for information. Points is, again, your very centric point list and point editor. And again, you edit by double clicking. Okay, there's your list again. And that one was to pull from a feature code list, not a list from the points that are in the file, but a list of allowable codes. Okay, picture, if you had you can associate an image with that point, which is sort of nice if you're out there trying to stake out these points. You see a picture, you could have back in the office associated a recovery picture for control points or whatever. Okay. Next, we have the raw data, and this is an actual RW5 file. Now, back when I was talking about how when we're working in SurvCE, the job file itself is the CRD, the coordinate file, okay? But the raw file, the RW5 file, is the file of observations that the data collector collected or that you generated at your paper trail, your audit trail, of having run any command that calculated a point, a bearing intersection, any type of coordinate geometry command, could have been captured and stored in that raw file that you can go back and edit and process later. But if I choose that, I'm going to open it up and then edit it, and you can see, you know, this was this particular file. What was it? Exercise 2-point groups. Which version? Type of coordinate file. This is just information that it captured. A client name, Daddy Warbucks, etc., etc. Okay. Now there's nothing in this raw file because, you know, we didn't do any of the actual collecting data. If I add, these are the different things. These are just, and I'd have to put these all in there manually. New points, yeah, put in the point number, etc. Excuse me. But when you're actually out there recording stuff in the data collector, let me get it to a real job here for a minute. Testing. I don't think this is, no, it's not. Let's try one more. Let's see if I find, I think a survey class. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So here, for instance, if I had a file, I'm out there doing the work on the ground, and I'm going to be generating and can carrying this raw file. And if I look at that, here's all the settings in my raw file. My job number, North Road, date is 11/01/2006, time is 10/21/08. SP, that's a stored point record. So I stored point number 1, 10,000, 12,000, elevation 100. Store point number 2, based on, you know, its relationship to 1, I probably had those set up to use for my control points. That's my measurements. I'm trying to think of what it is. 1.51. might be some GPS factor data. Let me see if I can. Side shot number 1. So I'm occupy point 1. So that's right here. This has my point number, northern, eastern elevation, rod height, and description. So there's my start at 10,000, 12,000, elevation 100, 0 rod height, start point. So I'm occupying 1. The backside point right now is 0. I just took an azimuth shot on, say, a spire or something. There's now my first side shot. I'm looking at 2. So now it switches to my horizontal angle. So there's my angle right, my slope distance, my zenith angle. And these are the readings. Okay, so this is north line 6. I'm trying to get this to show a little bit easier. There we go. Like side shot move. I'm sitting on 4. I'm going to shoot 336 because my previous back sight, wherever it was, but I'm shooting a bunch of side shots now from 4. Angle right, slope distance, zenith angle, rod height, and description. Okay. Offset points. So anyway, once all of this stuff is stored, Mike, then when I come back into either the office or I can do it right here. So it's process, no adjust, angle balance, transit rule, compass rule, Crandall rule. I can get a direct reverse report of all the angle sets that I turned. If I had multiple angle sets turned, I can draw the traverse line so it reads that and it knows a traverse occurs when I sit on an occupied point and a backsided point. When I store it as a traverse shot, it moves me up to that next point seen and sets my backside to my previous occupied. Otherwise, they're side shots. And then I can use it to triangulate in between points as well. And don't have anything here to pick out, but in any case, once that raw file is there, that's what it uses, what SurvCE uses internally to calculate these points that you're given in this listing of points. Okay, so however those points got in that coordinate file, whether they were stored, whether they were calculated from a coordinate geometry calculation, or whether they were observed, well, that's the stored part. But in the case of like you could have typed it in, that's your store point, or if it was observed, then it's either calculated from an angle and a distance that it records, or in the case of a GPS instrument, it actually just records that it does its calculations and corrections and then sends that corrected value into the data collector. All right. So the raw file is something that I can always go back to later if I need to change something. I had a surveyor that I was working with on a school job here last week that he had forgotten to change his rod height because he was shooting some inverts down in an excavated pit for a manhole to go into. And so all he had to do was go back into that raw file, change that rod height, and then reprocess it, and it recalculated the points, and then he was able to give me those points without having to go back out and reshoot them. So that's what that's for. You probably won't use it a whole lot on the data collector, okay, but it's always there behind you working, you know, in the behind the scenes. Now the feature code list. This is sort of the heart to my way of thinking of running both SurvCE and Carlson SurvCE in the office. But it's not in any means a requirement to running either one of those programs. And I think in your case, you've told me how, you don't really plan to be doing a lot of that stuff. You're not, you're not driven as a 25,000 points a day production warehouse or anything like that. So it could be something you can safely ignore. But basically, what this is, and I'll load up one to show you when it was not add, but load, um, is these are some codes. And when I say code, I mean like here's a code MH manhole. If I choose this as a code, it's going to automatically put that point on this layer that I decide for here called sewer. It's going to have a full description written out, even though I just put an MH. And then I can choose to whether I'm just going to do a point or if I'm going to draw between the same points as MH, if I'm going to draw a polyline between manhole points. I could do it that way as well. If I just do a point, I can choose a symbol, and it could be, let's just use this one, for instance. Or I can choose different ones. Okay, that'll work. All right. I could even give it a color. Let's make my manholes will be sort of orange. Okay. So now, anytime when I'm running the software, if I choose, when I hit descriptions, it's going to look at this list of codes. And when it matches that, it's going to then draw a point, put it on this layer, give it this full description. And if, like right there, I said no line work, but if I'm doing, say, let's go and it says, yes, there's a monuments. And there's your traverse lines. They should still be. All right. All right, here's a pavement point, for instance. So I'm telling it to, when you hit a point, store it as PV, as pavement, and then the next pavement point you shoot, PV, it's going to draw a line on this layer, 2D or 3D line type, whatever you tell it. So it's going to connect all of the PV points up together with line drawing commands. So you understand what field to finish is and what it does. That's its essence, is that it starts to do a lot of that drafting for you. Okay. So that's what that one is for. Now, again, I'm not going to burden you with that for now, because again, it's not something we do that you're going to be doing a lot of, because you don't have to use it in SurvCE, as you found out. Have you used it on work out in the fields already?
Yeah, use it in Newberry. In fact,
Yeah.
you and Jared and I spent a day training on it one time.
Yeah, well, I think I trained you on something there out in the parking lot once upon a time at a school or something, if I recall.
So it was the vacant office building.
Yeah, it was vacant. That was it. That's what I remembered. Yeah. So, in any case, um, so that is basically your list of allowable descriptions. But you could always, while you're in the midst of collecting data, you could decide to make up a new description, or you would like to change it. Instead of calling it MH, maybe you wanted to call it, SMH for storm manhole instead of whatever. And if it's not in the list, well, SurvCE will give you that flexibility. You can add these on the fly. Or if you're not using field to finish, it won't care whatever you call it. It won't even flag that condition. And I'll show you where all that stuff gets set a little bit later too in the setup. Okay. But that's what that's for. Feature code list is just like a field to finish code over on the desktop side. Now, data transfer is something that you probably won't use much at all on this, because you're putting stuff on a thumb drive and moving it across. But this was a way that you could have moved these to, you can change this job to a different folder. You can copy a job to a folder. In fact, if I said that, you have to go out and find it and then change its folder. But again, you don't have to do it from inside here. You can do it uh, just on the thumb drive. Now, let me go back to this. This manual transfer, if I do that, it runs this little thing, and I'm sorry it's small, but it lets you see. I can change to different drives. I've only got the one drive on my data collector, if you want to call it a drive. But I've got these different folders, and I can choose um, anything. And you see, I'm up at the root level. I've got these, all kinds of weird files. But if I select a file or multiple files and want to put it into a different folder over here, say, let's go into test files, and I'm going to take this file here, and let's say maybe also all right, that file. Oops, right, good. I didn't want to do it anyway. So I can select that and then hit the transfer button, and it's going to put that vehicle tracking config, whatever that is, over into C blah 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 test files. So I just bring it across, that moves it over. Again, I would do that out at the data collector. See, there's now that file there. So I would typically do that like you and I have done on those couple jobs before, where you take your thumb drive and you find it and bring it across. So that's what that's for, the data transfer side. Import export is really what I think of when I think of data transfer on this, because this lets you import let's say you're using the Javad from that other collection and you got that file from them. You can import that right into um, the job that you're working with right now, this current file. So I could choose that. Now, there's one slight difference between this and, say, on the points menu, import, export text or ASCII file. That's really what this is sort of to be like, but it is one important difference. When I choose this and it says import an ASCII file. Now, ASCII, if you recall from days of yore, that stood for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. And what it really means is text. It's a text file. It uses standard A through Z, 0 through 9, and certain allowable punctuation, characters, and stuff like that. Import one or export one. However, if you choose that, even though it said ASCII, this file type, notice that I can choose any of these, pre-built files, including a Carlson CRD file. So if I say a Carlson file, I'm going to go and select the file. I'm going to get these, say, Mantopo points. I'll say, okay, up here with my green check. And add to the point IDs. Well, just so I don't overwrite some of my other points, I'm going to put 0.5000. So whatever points are in this file whatever point numbers there are, is going to add 5,000 to it. I'll bring these points in, and the green check. Okay. Oh, I only had 1 point. Great. Let's try some more.
Now, when I do that on the example I have here, it says user defined, but when I click on that down arrow, it doesn't. Oh, yes, it does. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
So if
So
you leave it on user defined, it's going to go for a points file.
no, if you say user defined, um, and now you select it, it's looking for a TXT.
Yeah.
or ASCII, ASC, data file, DAT, CSV, which is a comma separated value file. It's a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Um, CRFIs, PF, PFNs, these are all different types of files, but it's looking for text. So if you, however, had, instead of user defined, chosen this, when you select the file, it looks for a Carlson file without doing the transformation. So when I bring those guys in, I'll bring in all the points, 5,000 point per text, and I'm looking at my details. All right, so I should have 22 additional points. I'll say
Now, why
okay.
is that add 5,000 to the ID? Why is that?
Okay. The reason I did that was um, the points I already had in this file that I'm working on. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 101, 102, whatever I had. And this file that I'm selecting, this other point, may also have had points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
I don't want to overwrite them. So I'm just saying I'm going to consciously choose to add 5,000 to those point IDs. And when I go back and look at my points, you see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to wherever my list of points ended. And then I started with 5,001, 5,002, 3. Okay. And as you can see, they're not even anywhere in the same.
So when if I'm copying a CRD file from my computer to the thumb drive, I guess do that by copying and pasting. And then
Yeah,
to copy it from the thumb drive to the data collector, I would use this program and look for a CRD file on the thumb drive, right?
you could. Yeah, that's one way to do it. I would tend to do it out there using the Windows File Manager. Outside of SurvCE entirely, because I would tend to want to copy over um, potentially other files like centerline files, or if I exported the DWG file and the DXF file. Uh, is there anything
Well, I
else?
remember once when we did it, we copied the whole file, the whole job file from
Yeah,
Carl.
right. Yeah, and again, in SurvCE, again, the job is the CRD, but there's a lot of other files that are going on in the background. There's a raw file, uh, potentially, not always, and potentially those CAD files. Also, I could have center lines, profiles, templates, surfaces. I can read in, so I know if I have a design surface and I'm out there, I want to stake out my uh, points. If I'm doing construction staking for a job that I have to write down on the stake how much cut or fill, then it's going to know that when I store that point when I'm out there on the ground. It compares what I read to what it is it's supposed to be in that future condition, and then it will display that for me as to how much to write on my stake. So um, to answer the question though, is can you do your transfer by using this? Yes, you can. Um, but really what I do this for is pretty much just coordinates. Okay. Um, doesn't doesn't have to be limited to that, but this particular routine, that's what it's for, is coordinates. And but what I want you to remember is that even though it says data transfer, and that's really technically what we're doing, this is a previous function, that data transfer is for like these job to job to job. Whereas import export is your points. Okay. And then also when you choose import export, and I wish they would change this label. I don't know why, but it always and still says import ASCII file, export ASCII file, but you're not limited to an ASCII file. An ASCII file simply means a text format, but you can see right there, that's not a text format. That's not a text format. That's not a text format. None of these are. Yeah, none of those are. But user defined, once I hit this, now those are all text, comma separated, tab separated, whatever form they're in. Okay. So just keep in mind under import export, even though it says ASCII, you can choose a specific one. And because there's no conversion required, all it did was read it into this file.
So if someone sends me an ASCII file,
Yeah.
I should import it as an ASCII file, or I can import it as a point. Is there distinguish between those two?
Well, yeah, if they send you, the only points that you can bring in directly are Carlson points. And that's this CRD or CRDB files. Okay. If somebody, let's say somebody uses Trimble and they want to send you some points, well, they can send you their POS file. If they do, you can read that. It will convert it for you and create CRD points for
I'm
you.
thinking about the guy who's been translating the
Terra model.
Terra model files. He typically sends me both a DWG and an ASCII file.
Right.
I've been able to import both of those into Carlson without any issue.
Yes. And the DWG though is the drawing, but it's the point files that you need out of that process.
Right.
And I forget what the extension is on those, but you can see Terra model's not one of the things here.
PRO, but you're right, it's not.
Yeah, a project file, but it's more than just coordinates, that PRO file is.
Yeah.
Okay, there's more to it than just that, but still, that's where it comes from. So what you would do in that case, you're going to import, export, and he would need to go into Terra model and say, he would need to export those into a CSV file or whatever it was that he sent you. In fact,
for the drawing, he does a save as a DWG, and then for the points, he does an export.
right. Well, you had a drawing, I remember, in that zip file. There were drawings, there were DXF files as well, but let's see a minute. Yeah, so you had the DXF, and then you had, yeah, you had CSV files. So that's your comma separated value, and because it's a CSV file, when I put it in, um, just give you a little visual thing.
That's the one I sent you the other day.
Yes, yes. So, and this is, you can see up here at the top, I'm running Excel, okay, because it recognizes, because it's so common to a comma separated value file. And so this one is your point number, your northing, your easting, your elevation, and then your description. Now notice all of these points that say minus 99,999, that's basically saying zero, but it's a nonsensical value to let you know that don't use the elevation from this point. But here's one though, that is your panel points. Is this a mine job, by the way?
No, it's a subdivision.
Oh, okay. So anyway, that's the deal. But now what that file actually looks like is this. See? And see right there the comma, comma, and the comma, and the comma. So that's a comma separated value file. Even though when I double click it, Excel puts it into cells on a spreadsheet, it's really nothing more than a piece of text and a comma and a piece of text and a comma. And that's what ASCII means. And when I choose user defined, and I can now come down here and choose CSV files and then go and find, in fact, send across some projects. Uh, um,
Now, if I'm importing that job to my data collector, should I just import the CSV files and forget about the DWD? Because that would be an awfully big file.
yeah, you could, and then all you'd have are the points. You wouldn't be able to see the map. Um,
Yeah, but I could have a plot of the map from the
yeah,
front.
sure, sure. That would be fine. Um,
I just don't want to overburden my data collector.
right. Although, I mean, I don't know what model you got, but we're we're getting to the point where we're not
Worry
really,
about memory.
yeah, we've got plenty. Um, let me see which file here. 9872. So let's look at this one, for instance. Um, and so see all these points, corner country, blah, 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 1 through 50, 1 through 53, okay? Now I'm going to put a 6,000 in front of those. And boom, there we go. And I'm going to go to this and zoom here, and I have no idea. It's my 9,000s.
Which job was that?
Uh, that was your 4483, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, it was 4483. Now, um, see, there's a lot of stuff with this. Why is turn that off a bit?
Well, that's Burr Industrial Park.
Yeah.
I don't know what all those crazy lines are crossing like that for.
Well, I wonder if that that's field to finish.
What?
That's field to finish. So apparently, let me go back to uh, CTRV. Let's look right here, for instance. See that EP,
Yeah,
PC, EP,
yeah,
POC, EPPT? Well, edge of pavement is set. See that field code, 3D
yeah,
polyline EP.
right.
So my codes just happened to match what his codes were, or whoever did this job. Um,
We did that when we were Dewberry.
yeah,
So
so when
Dewberry
he,
probably taught us the codes.
yeah, so that EP is the edge of pavement. The PC starts the point of curve. This POC is not necessary. It's a point on the curve. I understand what it's meant by that, but anything between a PC and a PT is understood to be on the curve. That's why you don't need that POC. Um, but it's very interesting that that would work. Let's see. Uh, all right, so that's a layer called EOP. So if I changed my, there we go. So see all of the red lines? I changed layer EOP to show up as red. Now, the reason you're seeing all of these like weird things here is because there were, that should be where um, a pin down was issued, like or a start and a stop, because here's an EPPT. Looks like is E might be end. And it comes over here and finds this next one way over. Well, it's too much. Anyway, um, so probably there's an E. Offset both. E close. Yeah, somebody was using, looks like Carlson. Uh,
Well, it would have been Carlson, probably.
okay, yeah, because you said this was done while at
Yeah.
Dewberry. Okay, yeah, so it
That would have
looks
been
like,
right about the time when we were switching over to Carlson.
uh, all right. So E is the code for end. I'm trying to find, were there ever any B's for begin? I don't see any. Let me look at this.
There's an EPN.
Yeah, there's the E, but I don't know that because see, using the B code or the begin code is not a requirement. I just wonder if, yeah, it looks like the only thing they did was they used close or CLO codes. They use E. So my feature code list, my special codes, right now I've got end. So if I made that E instead of end, now watch this. I'm going to come back here and under tools, field to finish, I'm just going to have it update. So I'll say U to update. Now you see all those straight lines went away,
Yeah.
all those crossings, because now and then here's this line, what,
That shouldn't
concrete?
happen to me though, because I don't have the field to finish
Well, yeah, I mean,
when I
the
only
only thing you
only have
need to make, the only thing you need to make it happen is just type in the code and tell the code to draw a line or not. In this case, see this, and there's a nice example of, there's your edge of pavement, PC, POC, PC, C. So, whoever did that looked like that was pretty well defined um, to go around the cul-de-sac, the edge of pavement there. Appears a building. In fact, if you look at this building, look at these points for a minute. Uh, I've got a building, a BLD/block, BLD/block, and the slash would be inside the desktop field to finish. That means it's going to put block. It's going to append the word block to whatever description the BLD says to use. So it's a block building. But this was a building, a BLD/block, a BLD/block, and up here it says BLD RECT. All right, so if I look at this feature code list, that's one of my special codes. And I come down here and I see that, and that says closed rectangular. Otherwise, what it would be is BLD, 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 and then it would only draw those two edges, okay, from here to here, from here to here. But because this last code said rectangular, it knew to finish that out because I've drawn, I've got the three corners of a four-corner building, so that's what that code does for you, right? So that's very interesting. That's the first time I really looked at it, and I didn't, you know, I typically have mine set to draw field to finish, and there's that much of commonality. It looks like, concrete was one, EOP or EP, whatever that is, but here's some, like this point, it's TRAV. So TRAV's not a code that draws. Here's a point. There's another BLDG as opposed to BLD. All right, so that didn't. So up there you had, let's find a BLD anything. So what? There's a BLD, BLD. But there's some BLDG corner. So if I look at my feature code list, I've got BLD. Well, if I copy that one, or let's just make a new one called BLD 2D line. Okay, so BLD. So this is going to be BLDG, and I'm going to put it under no category. Layer will be building, and we'll just call it BLDG 2D polyline. And let's make it a little heavier. We'll say OK, and we'll say OK. Come back to that. Yes, I'll save the changes. Error writing code file. Why? Looks like it wrote it. All right. I'll come back to this, and I will set my BLDGs. Let's make them blue. And finally, I'm going to reprocess my field to finish. And I should see, so there's that building. Here also is a building. Okay, you see it went from here to here to here to here. But they forgot to do the closeout. BOD, there's a close. All right, so there's my CLO. This is close. All right. And now down in here, probably some more building points. And I'll turn these. Yeah, see building, 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 building. Oops. And that has no description. So I'm guessing, just looking at the size of those, building, is this a square building here? I don't know. The description's not on there. Um, so it's a little weirder. Maybe it's, went like this and over and down and around. I just don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The interesting thing is on this project is that when I see this stuff, I can look at this and immediately say, oh, well, you've got some codes that obviously drew some stuff. There's the roads. These blue lines are buildings. There's this black line, which, what is that one? That's a description called blue flag. That's probably not.
Well, that's not just the survey file, though. That's the design file, too, probably.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. But the fact that, so there's one called top MH11. So I've got my manhole set to draw lines in my codes. If I go to this MH, and let's not draw lines, we're just going to do that, and I'm going to give it a symbol. Yeah, save it, I know. And now I'm going to field to finish. Update. And traverse. Oh, that's a top.
I didn't mean to get you all tied up in this.
Yeah, anyway, let me just add one real quick. and we'll make them okay. And boom, and yes, and go back here, yes, and go now. What was that? Leo sewer manhole. Okay. Well, it's not reading that code list file correctly. It's still keeping the line work. But anyway, the whole point of any and all of this is that just by having the points with descriptions on them in and coupled with telling it to use these feature codes, as long as those codes are defined, I'm going to get that stuff drawn. That's why if you make that as part of your practice, you don't ever have to worry about transferring your DWG files. They'll draw themselves, and that way you can sort of keep an eye on that behavior. And again, it's whether it's coming out of design or coming out of the field, those descriptions are going to drive it. Now that stuff gets set up here in this job settings when we talk about using um, whether we're going to use those descriptions. And we'll come back to that. Mike, I'm going to let you get up and stretch your legs. So I'll go do the same before we start getting into all of that. But I wanted to just point out these different commands, some different tools. Uh, there's your points, your raw data, the feature code list, when we talked about that, and there's your import export. Delete job does exactly that, like you would think. And then about SurvCE, that's the one that showed you your license list and everything there, give you your license number, and then exit, of course, gets out of the program. All right. So we'll come back here in a few minutes. We'll pick things back up. So I will stop the share at the moment.
Okay.
And we'll pause on. There we go. We're recording again. And so, so we looked at all these buttons on the file menu. We're going to come back to this in a minute and explore this job settings pretty heavily. But real quickly on the other remaining buttons, the equipment. This is where you
Are you going to share your screen with me again?
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. Here we go. And share. Sorry about that. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. So yeah. So on the equipment tab, you have your basically total stations and GPSs, and um, and a couple of other little peripherals you'll see in a minute. And this is where you configure not just the one, but let's say under total station, I can choose any given one, say a robot, as a simulation, so it runs inside this little demo package. Um, and let's say, we'll keep that one, so it's now switched to that. I can now also choose, let's do a Carlson Direct, and you've got a Leica robot. Let's do a Leica robot. What model do you have?
It's 13.
The 13. All right, so there we go. Now, so in doing all of this stuff, you see I can have many more than just the one. I have on the current, these are all the ones that are supported. And so if this is the one I'm using, my current one, I've got it set to current. Then I've got communications. How am I communicating uh, to the data collector? Different settings. Foresight target, backside target. And if I am using a Leica 360, I've got some settings under that. I can give it a name, give it the offsets. Um, so basically you would have this configured. Now my guess is that when you bought your equipment, they either went ahead and configured your data collector to run with that instrument, or they gave you instructions on getting it done.
No, they did it.
Okay. So, so that part's taken care of for that particular instrument. But you see, it lets you do anything and everything that you can do on any given piece of equipment. I search, I can do a power search settings, um, you know, and that's whether you get the joystick speed, et cetera, turn to the point and stake out horizontal. So
That's a very valuable tool. That really helps a lot,
yeah, yeah.
especially when you're trying to cut brush.
Oh, I know. I, I remember I started to think, I started, I guess in recent times, I've caught myself saying stories about you. Yeah, I remember back when I was starting this stuff and I having to cut through these wild rose bushes and stuff. I'm thinking, well, it wasn't all that long ago. I'm not that old. And then I started watching a lot of videos on YouTube here lately of one of my favorite comedians is Craig Ferguson, who was on the Drew Carey show. He played the boss, Mr. Wick. But he had that late show, and that's what there's watching. And he's actually, I'm thinking, well, he's getting older and getting older, and he's aging gracefully and looks nice. When you make $8.5 million a year, you can take care of yourself, I guess. But then I read something about his bio, and he's like a year younger than I am, and I realized, well, crap, Mike. So, so yeah, I used to cut wild rose, line through wild rose bushes, and
I've
now,
done that. I've looked at somebody and thought, God, he looks old. And then I look at how old he is and say, oh my God, he's 2 or 3 years younger than I
yeah,
am.
I know. So, so yeah, I'm allowed a couple of geezer stories now, every now and then. So anyway, so yeah, that is nice now, especially with the robots. I mean, that you think about the advancement that gave you, the small surveyor, the small practitioner. Uh, when I was starting, I was part of a four-man survey crew, and we had 21 four-man survey crews, each with their own trucks, and everybody had their job. And now it was admittedly a large firm down in Houston, but that whole industry just got turned on its head, and then uh, now you got one guy doing what four guys used to do.
Yeah.
So this is like, I grew up around the coal mine country. So this is like not just when the continuous miner was a big advancement, but it still took a couple of guys to run. But then the long walls, man, you put one of those down underground and they mined out a whole section of mine. You know, one guy working at the works head could outproduce, a crew of 20 men from years before.
Yeah.
So
That's why
anyway,
all those miners got laid off in West Virginia
yeah.
years ago.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whole towns just dried up and disappeared.
That they did. That they did.
They like to blame it on environmental rules, but that isn't really what took the big hit in mining. It was mechanization.
Yeah. Yeah. See, there's a lot of that in my family, a lot of my cousins and such. My grandfather was one of 10 children, 8 of whom were boys, and all 8 of those men were in the mines. Now, my grandfather wound up
Coal mine.
work, yeah, yeah, cold, and it was down in southern West Virginia and southwest Virginia. Down, did you ever see the movies? The movie Rocket Boys?
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, October Sky was the book or whatever. Anyway, Homer Hickam and my grandmother, that grandfather's wife, they went to high school together.
Hmm.
And I've met Homer. I've talked to him a couple of times. And where that took place was just 15 miles from where I grew up,
Hmm.
just across the mountain. Now, and the state line was in between us. I was on the Virginia side. And in fact, Homer's teacher that
One that
encouraged
died.
the boys
Yeah.
uh, to go on to the national science competition, that Miss Riley, the one that died of leukemia, well, her sister was an English teacher in my school and was the vice president or the vice principal after she quit being an active teacher. And I went to school with all of her 3 kids, so we were all you know pretty big friends and such. But so yeah, it was all tied up in that, and that movie was very, very true to life. The coal camp, uh, you know, way of life and the whole bit. Um, so yeah, but Homer and my grandmother are not the same age, but she lived over in that town. She went to that same high school. Um, I'm trying to think. They probably graduated. I don't want to say probably. My grandmother might have been 15 years older than him, but she knew there was one of the boys in the book and in the movie that I think his name was Red O'Donnell or something like that, or Red Carroll. Anyway, it was the son of the guy that drove the old scrap truck that would get them their old, uh, you know, their scrap iron and steel and stuff. But so my grandmother was a classmate of his. But in any case, yeah, mining was in everybody's blood down there. Now my dad became a watchmaker and a jeweler. He didn't want anything to do with the mine, so he
Smart man.
thankfully broke the cycle for for our branch of the family. But so so what did you just ask?
Because that he was a smart man.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He's
Mining is
he-
a tough life.
yeah, and he saw what it did to all of his uncles and such like that. So um,
So it kills you over time.
oh, it does. It does. My grandfather, he had black lung, but like everybody else in his generation, he also smoked. So who knew what was the real, what contributed more? Who knows? But it sure did not help. But anyway, uh, so that being said, this is all getting back to the topic. Um, so that's sort of like the long wall miner sort of a relationship there. So this bit um, on the equipment, and again, it's not just a total station. This is not whereas you can select the current one that you want to use. This is where you can configure each one of those that you have in your list. You select up here as to whether you're using a total station or a rover or what have you. So if I go to total station, well, it's going to switch me to the one that I've set to be current. So if I'm using 5 or 6 different brands of total stations, I have to go to the equipment tab first, hit this, switch to the one I'm using. Let's say I'm using a Nikon. And then when I go down to my GPS rover, or now go back to my total station, it's now going to go and run, oops, not supported because it didn't, this is not connected to the Nikon total station. But anyway, just a couple of places. So now that's now my current one. So when I switch back and forth, that would be the one it's going to use. Okay. So total station, base, rover, GPS, raw data only. I'm not sure exactly why that's even there, but oh well. And then the configurations, the localization, um, and certain functions that are context dependent on what equipment you're using. I'm using the like a robot, so I can do a localization. I can do a check level. Have you done that one yet? Do you?
No.
All right. So when you do that, of course you can't do the link. Let me see if I can switch to this if it allows me to do it. Yeah, it doesn't right now. But what happens when you're really connected to an instrument, again, I'm running this little simulator, is that the instrument itself, if it's capable of doing it, and the Leica is apparently because the button shows up, but it will run the leveling routine and then send you back to the data collector. You can be out in the field with it, out away from it, and you can see whether it's drifting out of level or not. Maybe a construction truck goes by real close to it and rattles the ground. You're wondering if you got to go back and reset things up. So you can check the level of that instrument from remotely. Okay. Tolerances, again, you're going to put in allowable tolerances that are as long as you're not going to um, if you're within these limits, don't complain. Don't give me an error message.
Right.
If you are, then it'll throw up a warning flag. Now my stakeout tolerance 0.328 feet. That looks like what, a centimeter? No, 0.3 the third. It's 10 centimeters or something. Anyway, it's part of a meter. Now here's something too. While I'm here, uh, I'm going to change that to 5 centimeters, right? But you see that number right there in feet?
Yeah.
Now, so what's 5 centimeters in feet? Well, we can do the calculation. Or if I type 5 and then type CM, and as soon as I tab out of the field, it recognizes CM as centimeters and switches to feet.
Yeah, that's
So,
about 15 centimeters before 3.28. That's a lot.
yeah, well, yeah, it is. That was too much, although it's a stakeout tolerance. So if I had, let's say 24 inches. Say I put 24 IN, see it knows it's 2 feet. So, and I think also the inch symbol, yes, it does. So any of these fields, whether it's here or whether you're doing a calculation or anything else, that if it's expecting a particular unit type, if you type in those, M for
I don't
meter,
have that
cm
navigate
for
to
centimeter,
tolerance.
all of those different types of unit designations, it will convert it for you. You don't have to go out, find a calculator and do the calculation. So now my stakeout tolerance, I would want to be,
I don't have that navigate to tolerance in my
at
list.
least say 0.2 feet or something. Um, Probably even tighter than that, depending on what I was staking out. So anyway, these are all where you would set those type of things. Peripherals, and again, remember I'm set on this like a robot. So my peripherals I've got available is I've got a laser, a depth sounder, a light bar, and an output code stream, this NMEA output. I really don't know a whole lot about that, but that's, again, all the different types of things, set up the code, the communication setup. All right. If Laser can also have a GPS on it. Automatic laser read, you can do the alignment. Okay, so all of those different peripherals. Now, if I happen to be on a different, say a GPS rover, now you see I no longer have that leveling, but I've got this sky plot. Position satellite view, satellite info. Wow, I remember when I was first teaching this software, we hit this sat view button and we would maybe get 4.
Yeah.
So good to see. And peripherals for, in that case, again, I've got a laser, a depth sounder, and a light bar, but not, oh, come on. But not the output button. I'm getting my manual total station. There we go. All right, so, and then I've got right here, because I'm in a total station setup, I've got total station utilities as my last one, none for that equipment. If I switch to the robot, I was in the manual one, and now I look at no total for that one either. Let's see. Let's go to a SurvCE Direct. Well, I would have whatever utilities pertained to whatever whatever model I had chosen. So I don't have any there that are, but they would be along the lines of this check level, anything that would work for that. So if I'm then in my GPS rover, notice it's going to change now to some GPS utilities where I can do the simulation, position, some different options, take a medium rotation, medium acceleration, and that rotation acceleration and jitter the position to simulate GNSS accuracy. And what that has to do with, Mike, is when I'm over here doing a survey, for instance. Now watch, you see how that jitters a little bit there?
Yeah.
And this rotation and this, that's my speed that we're setting. So I'm basically running a GPS unit, but it's simulated in this little program.
Right.
Okay, so that's what this was, simulation options, medium, and jitter position to simulate that. So GPS raw utilities, free memory on the receiver. No, okay, so not much I can do with any of that. Simulation position, if I am looking at, so let's go down here to 606. See, I can start from that position, and that way, if I'm like way off in Timbuktu, and this little guy right here, this little demonstrator, then I'm going to start there. And let's take points. So now I'm starting from right there. So let's just stop that. I can see where I was. There's that 18, whatever it was. There's one of these 18 numbers. 18606. There it is. Okay. So what that was using this GPS simulator that I'm or my GPS rover simulation. I basically told the system where it was that I'm currently located. Okay. In real life, that's going to be based on where the satellites tell you you're located. That's all that's going to do. Okay. So now, if let's see, there I'm on my total station current. If I choose configure under equipment, which is uh, based on it's again the equipment configuration. So I'm going to switch to, I'm going to be in my GPS simulation mode. That's the equipment I'm going to use. I'm going to hit configure. Now, when I configure this, I need to tell it a coding style. Right now, classic one-touch store points graphic. Let's say if I go to classic, for instance, and I go to survey, store points, not, not real sure what that does. That does something to the coding. I'll have to look that up, Mike. I'm not, that's new to me. I'll have to see what that is. But then prompting for your total station setup. Now this is, I think, no. Yeah. So that's, now notice under the, I get general view and sets, okay, because I'm in a total station mode. If, however, I'm in my GPS mode, I no longer have that sets button, okay? So just be aware um, of the context awareness that these individual screens have, because they'll go back and forth between different configurations. So anyway, bumping through these, if I store a fixed only solution with my GPS, that's typically what I would do. Now I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time here on the GPS stuff with you because you're not using it for that, but you get the idea that you can do this. But anyway, that means it doesn't bother to keep track of and store all of the float solutions. It waits till it gets a fixed solution. That's the only part it would store. Prompt for the total station setup. And what this means is when you, if it's on or off, is when you are in the collecting mode and you're hitting the button and you're getting your side shots, but now you're ready to traverse. If you're using a total station and you're actually running a traverse by occupying and backsliding, when you go up and you hit the traverse button, then it's going to have, when it says prompt for the total station setup, it's going to stop and ask you, okay, what's your point number? What are you backsliding? Whatever. If you don't have that on, it assumes traditional traversing, meaning if I'm on point number 5 and I'm backsliding point number 4, and I've shot in 101, 102, 103, all these side shots, and I hit the side shot mode, it's going to assume it's going to point number 6 and will now be backsliding point number 5. Okay. So if you prompt for it, it gives you a chance to overwrite those conditions. Same thing, prompt for height and description, that's your rod height, and for your prompting for your point descriptions. Prompt for point notes. So when you store a point, You have the ability to enter additional notes, which a lot of surveyors sort of unnecessarily will try to put a bunch of point notes in the points description, but you don't need to. You can still have MH could be your description for a manhole, and then you could attach a note to say, you know, Alcosan, you know, Chartiers run interceptor, 12-inch, you know, sanitary. You could put all that stuff in the notes, or you know, point is a railroad spike inside of a tree on the south side of Baker Street. You know, all of those things you could put in separately from them. And if you want to use notes, and if you're using notes as part of your practice, and you want to be prompted, you would turn this on. Otherwise, you don't have to be prompted. If you're not prompted, you can still enter notes. You just have to consciously choose to do so, but it lets you jump on to the next point without having to answer the question of not putting in notes. Okay. So prompt if a duplicate of the backside of the last reading on the total, and this parentheses TS means total station. So if I'm in total station mode, if I have a duplicate of my backside or last reading, maybe I've forgotten or whatever, it will prompt me and remind me that that's what it's doing. Excuse me. 3D mode, record elevation, yes or no. All right, so there, if you don't want to ever see an elevation on your points, you can turn it off and it won't bother to track them. Okay. I, for one, am of the mind of, even if I don't use them, it's data that I have. I might as well have it, because maybe I could, you know, for whatever reason, might need to go back and look at a point and decide whether it was above or below something else in general, and I can just compare their elevations. But anyway, it's there if you wanted. If you, if this is unchecked, I believe the raw file will not bother to record the vertical angles, so it can do the trig calc for the height difference between points when you're shooting points. I think that is the case. I'm not totally sure. But anyway, you get a sense. Now this use virtual keyboard, when that is on, have you seen that on your data collector yet?
No.
I'm not sure if this one will do it. Let me try. No. No, it probably requires to be on your own, on a real data collector. So we'll turn it off. Anyway, what that is let's say you've got a, I don't know, whatever kind of data collector, because SurvCE runs on a number of different brands of data collectors and different styles. There was one they had a few years back that was just a thing about this big, like a little mini, uh, almost like a chunky cell phone, but it was all flat, you know, and it was all screen. It was all touch screen. So it didn't have, like your data collector, you got that, you know, all the keys all over it. So it didn't have those keys. And so that virtual keyboard would pop up just like you've seen on like an iPad or something like that, or even on your phone. Uh, and then you would take the stylus and tap the letters that you would need, and then the keyboard would pop back down all the way. All right. Same thing with a joystick if you're using that to control a robotic total station. Now right here, use graphic icons in survey. I don't know what you have, like if I turn that off and I'm over here to survey, I'm going to store points. So let me go back to simulation. So I don't have to do a setup. All right, so if I store points now, remember those pictures I had, the little green arrow into the data collector and the pine tree and all that. That was store points. Then there was that sigma over n, that was an average. So these are all now, instead of using a picture that says store points, it's S to store point, A for average, O for offset. Okay, there's your offset, that was your pine tree. C's to configure, there's your general view, and that's the screen we're on right now, back on the other side. And there's my monitor Skype on. Okay, so that is here. That, 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 that. What was that? Graphical icons, okay? Audible alerts, same thing. If you got, let's say you've exceeded the tolerance on an angle or something, you can turn that on. So it beeps at you, or not. Use, for new job, use an alphanumeric format. I would almost always leave that on. Line details, again, that's if you're using field to finish and it's drawing lines between points of the same codes, it will track the details for you when you click on them. It's really sort of silly to give you the choice to turn that off. It doesn't hurt anything to have it on. But anyway. Use layerized points by feature code. Now, well, not sure exactly what that does to the points themselves, because if you're using feature codes, meaning field to finish, it's also going to put points on specific layers. So I'd have to look at what it does. It's not going to affect you at all if you're not using field to finish there. And you use control points for map selection. That's meaning using control points is that I can have a separate CRD file that has my control information in it only. So I can have points, 1 through 10 for control, and then when I'm out shooting points, I can have points 1 through 10 as points I'm observing, because I'm using a separate control points file. It doesn't overwrite the points. Okay. Force unique IDs for line work. Now those IDs are, again, it's a field to finish feature. So when I'm generating line work, let's say I'm doing the edge of pavement, and then I go to do another edge of pavement. So my first code was EPB to begin, and I'm working along, and then I need to go to another piece of roadway or another line. Maybe I'm on the other side of the street, and I would say BP1 or whatever. Or if I just said, if I said BP begin, and then I went over and said BP begin again, so I still got the one, I said BP, I meant EP. I've still got the one edge of pavement running. It's open. It's still being built. If I haven't closed it out and I started another one, it's going to make me give that ID, give it a suffix number on that code. So again, it's not anything to worry about if you're not using the field to finish. So upload the station setup to the instrument. Most of the instruments don't need to know that, but if yours can make use of that information, it's basically, I think, I'm not sure why it wouldn't. I think it's for those instruments that calc on the fly. So it's going to need to know HIs and that sort of information. Show advanced back sights. That gives you the chance to like double up your angles and direct and reverse prompting. Um, Displaying averages, a slope information in stake points. So if you're staking out a bunch of points, you can turn this on and it will show you when you're going to do the stakeout what the slope distance is, as well as the horizontal distance. It's up to you if you get some value out of that. I wouldn't myself. Uh, Visual alert in stakeout mode for GPS not fixed solution. So, okay, that's probably not a bad idea. Um, Show codes and descriptions as buttons, and those are these. If I am ready to store points and I go over here and I store points, and you see these buttons right here on the right, this one,
Right.
um, in fact, I'll turn that one off. And if I think about, watch what happens over here in the description when I hit this button. See that BEG for begin? Because that means that's my point, my green point, and I'm starting to collect points that draw lines, perhaps. That's what the begin means.
Okay.
This one, PC, you see that's the start of a curve. That's my point of curve.
Yeah.
This one is, now I changed my, what I used to have is END, I changed it to E to match your Terra model points. Here's the end of a curve, so that's going to be a PT. This is that close command. There's the 3 points of the building. There's that rectangle command. Okay, so that's what this switch does, is it gives you these buttons. The dot, dot, dot means there's some more over here. There's offset horizontal. This is a join to point number, offset vertical. This is a don't read the elevation, don't use it for computing the surface. This one is to smooth out a bunch of points. There's a jog code. And again, these are all field to finish type things. This 1 and 2 means if I'm working on one edge of pavement, I can switch and choose another code to start working on, and it keeps multiples open. In my dot, 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 come back to some various other ones. There's a project, a baseline project point, best fit point, kind of routines. Okay. And then finally back to the beginning, cycle over again. All right, so that's that button under config. Under show codes and descriptions is buttons. Now, a magnified view in stake points direct total station. I guess that, which, well,
I don't have
stake
that one
points direct
online.
total station. So if I'm, go to my total station, and I'm going to stake points, occupy 1, backside 4, and backside, set my zeros, set angle and read, go,
Can you hear me?
go, go, go. All right, so now, yes, you see this, the 2 lines down here at the bottom, oops, where I was,
Hey,
go
Ken.
back.
Ken.
See these lines down here, how they're bold faced, turn to angle right, move out 1925 feet. Okay. So that, I believe, is that. Not sure. Let's see. Oops. Back. Stake points. Go. No, that's not that. Well, I don't know what that is. I'll look that up as well.
Hey, Ken.
Magnified view. Oh, well, never mind. All right. So, yes, sir.
I think you have my microphone turned off.
Wait, I can't hear you at all.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Now I can. Did
Okay.
you? What happened?
Uh, I don't know. Um, I don't have that on my screen, the one below codes description of buttons. There's nothing below that. Mine is blank.
You don't have this magnified view?
No.
Uh, hmm. Go back to the file tab, all the way back to the beginning, and tell me your about SurvCE. What's your version number?
Um, 6.035/119.
Oh, well, duh, you're using the same thing I'm using, of course. How can you not have that? Go to your, this button up here at the top. What, wonder what is your, what does this icon to the very first one by the hard hat, what does that look like? A total station or a GPS?
It's hard to tell. Looks like yours.
That red one with the,
Yeah.
ah, okay. That's one of those context aware things. See that? I don't have it either because the, that Leica doesn't have that as an option. Now, if I choose this up here in the next to the last one on the right at the top, that's the total station and that's the Leica. But if I use this manual total station,
Yeah.
meaning it's not connected by radio or Bluetooth to an actual piece of equipment, which this will run, by the way. You can do this. You can put this on a laptop and take it out in the field and use it instead of your data collector. Um, as long as you got your equipment to communicate through Bluetooth or whatever. But anyway, so now when I configure that and I go down to the bottom, that's where I see that magnified view and stake points, direct total station. So I don't know, because it wouldn't, it's not like it's pointing the telescope at a point. See, the other one that it did not have that code was talking about a robotic. This is as if you're looking through the eyepiece, but it wouldn't magnify that. It wouldn't make the optics get any more magnified than the lenses would make it. I wouldn't think. Unless that's something new. But anyway, now something that's easy to overlook on this screen. Now I'm back on the equipment screen, configure. Is down there, is these last fields down there at the bottom, because what we've done up here is control a couple of things about, how the collecting works. But down here as well, the number of readings to average. So if I'm, if I'm a typical
Actually,
single,
I have 3 lines there instead of 2. I
yeah,
have the number of readings to average, and then I have after readings to set RTS. What's that mean?
okay, let me see. You've got this. That's
Yeah.
your robotic total station.
Okay.
Okay, so the number of readings to average on your robotic total station. And again, it's just some measurement redundancy. If you take 2 readings and take the average, that's what it'll do. It'll read the point, it'll back off and reacquire it and read the point again. GPS is 1. I usually put that up to say 5. So, oops, let's go back to general. But then when I'm, doing your total stations, how many it's going to work. Uh, After reading, you want it to just basically, after it reads the point, does it go into standby mode and it's waiting on a signal? Does it lock where it was, or does it track you as you move if you've got the glass out there? That's what most of them would do. And then now finally the enter/store icon. What does it do? Does it read the point and store, or does it store only? And what that has to do with is that center button on the data collector, that right in the middle of the circle in the cursor, um, is when you're out here and you're storing points, uh, so if I'm out here storing points, if I hit that central button, which is this one, that's my store points command up here in the first button. Or if I hit the button on the data collector, that's going to read the point and store it if I have it configured to read and store. Now that's for the total station. This is for the robot or GPS. Okay. If I say store only, then what that means is I have to read the button first, which is also done by that enter button. Okay. And then once it's read, I hit the button again to store it. Okay. It's just basically a shortcut. So there's store and read and store. It's on a total station. And that means that um, if I hit the button, it's going to read where I'm pointing and then store the information. Or if I say store and read, then what it's going to do is store the previous measurement and then read this new measurement.
Okay, mine doesn't have those 3 options on there. It only has store only, and it has read and store.
Okay, yeah, that's, well, again, because I switched to this GPS simulation. If I'm back to my total station, which is going to say not supported, um, and then I configure. So now I've got my robotic total station can standby lock track, and then my enter store I can read and store or store only. Okay. So again, like I said, that all of that stuff is all very much dependent on what you are sitting on right here in terms of which equipment you have set to be current. Okay, and that's the configure. And that's why the configure button is on this equipment tab, because it's equipment sensitive as to what it's going to set up. Now, your other stuff, let's look back at the file menu now. Uh-oh. There we go. There we go. So if we look back at the file menu, these job settings, these are going to be some general behaviors that are not specific to the equipment, okay? So let's wrap up this equipment bit. We configure, and this tells us how to store our data, what to do along the way of storing the data, like um, prompting for setups, et cetera, the number of things that we read before we take averages. So basically, um, how we want that specific equipment to behave. And then that's on our general tab. Now we got view and sets. And view means when you're doing when you're out there, the view method are these two choices: in and out, and left and right, north and south, azimuth or bearing basis. And this is as if when you're doing stakeout and it's giving you directions. If you do in and out, left and right, that's assuming that you are in relationship. You see this, the reference object is either the instrument or the point, and it can be usually this, and then we're going to move relative to either the rod or the reference object. Okay, so if I choose in and out, left and right, let's say I'm at the total station with the data collector, and I've got a guy out there in the field with me with the rod, and so I say, all right, go ahead and stake out this point. He takes off, my gun is tracking, and it's telling me, all right, he needs to go left 2.3 feet or come in or come out. And so when, now in and out is always closer to or further away, but left and right is going to be relative. It's either relative to the instrument or relative to the rod.
Right.
So, so if I say relative to the instrument, it's as if he's looking at the instrument, walking backwards perhaps, and so he goes left and right as he looks at the instrument. As well, and again, typically the instrument is typically the reference object, but then it's the relative to the object or the rod. So if you're out in the field doing a stakeout and you're using a robot, and one's not right and one's not wrong. It's just however you want to be prompted, however you want to think about it.
Right.
So I think I would do this if I were running a smart rod. I would do this. If I'm running the smarts back at the gun, I would probably do that, so that I could then give him hand signals. Say when I say go right, I'm going to push my right hand, and so the guy's going to see which direction he needs to go. Okay. The rest of this down here is if I have a center line file, that's an alignment center line. It says to use that as the reference object instead of the instrument up here, but use that as a reference object when applicable. So if I'm doing staking routines off of that road module, that tab that you don't have active on your data collector, and if you're not doing a lot of road staking, no worries that it's this one here. So when I do these stakeouts, I can choose to stake out a station number and an offset, okay, as well as specifically named numbered points. So in that case, if I were doing that, um, I would want to use that as my reference object. So it tells me left and right of the center line, you know, and it will tell me in or out of the station that I'm choosing to stake out. So that's um, that's just an option there. So I would turn that on if I were using it. It's not going to have any bearing on what you do. Your proximity stake uh, points, not sure. Let's see something real quick. It doesn't say. Let's see here. Right, description, prompt for point notes, 3D mode. Oh, okay. It doesn't have the ones that I'm going to have to go look up that are new. They haven't been documented yet, but here's this shows you what the enter store button will do in the different situations. Um, that's the old help system. But I want to see real quick if this has, oops, what do you mean? I don't have permission to view it. All right, let's do it this way. Uh, all right, fine. Go back this way. Okay, now here's what I was looking for. So get familiar with this document. That's one of the files that you downloaded. You may have a printed version of it with your equipment that you bought. I'm not sure. Um,
No, they don't give you a printed version anymore.
yeah, that's what I figured. Heights. The height icon will toggle between the current height of measurement and the list of previously stored as useful switching between these things. Okay. There we go. Here's something you should probably make a note of, Mike, is let's go back to this general. See if I can find it now. See this use line details?
Yeah.
That says right here, it has two effects. First, when it's on, line work will automatically draw anytime a feature code is changed or new points with codes are added to an existing point list. That's why when I imported your points from that Terra model job, they drew all those things automatically, okay? Because that was configured to be on. Otherwise, since you're not using field to finish, at least to start, you might want to leave that off. Now, it's not going to hurt, I think, because I don't think you have any, you don't have any feature codes defined yet. So I don't think that will be a problem. So, but just to be aware of that. Say second, it enables selecting the lines by clicking on the leading options. Well, okay, yeah, you might want to leave it turned on then because of that, because it lets you.
Because of what?
It lets you select the line as if it were something that you, so, as if it were something that you drew in the CAD system, even though it's field to finish generated, and it's not just a picture holder. If you don't turn that on, apparently you can't select it. So use layerized points by feature code. I told you I was going to look that one up, and it said this feature allows the user to use point layers. Well, that doesn't mean anything. You know, I can use point layers. Yes, I know that. And I do and I will, but I don't need to have that switch because my feature code list drives that the way I want to do it. I don't know why that's there, but in any case, probably not a bad idea to have it. And it's not just for field to finish. I mean, you can create points. You can create points in the CAD system just by, calculating something. It's not always something that you observe. So I would make sure I had that one on. Start commit by that.
Hey, Ken, I told my wife I'd be done about 4 o'clock. She's planning on dinner around 5.
Oh, okay. I will let you go then. And then Tuesday, I just want to make sure that you got your full go. So anyway, take a look through that. But then Tuesday, like you might want to go back and review on your real data collector what some of these are and look
Yeah,
at.
I will.
And we'll finish this bit up. Not much to go on there, but what I want to get into first thing is these job settings for how we do the stakeout and set up our descriptions and all that kind of stuff, because it's kind of cool and it makes it automatic. It makes things work a little quicker. All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to switch it over to there.
I have a couple of unrelated questions for you about Carlson.
Okay, sure.
You don't need to answer them right at this minute, but you're thinking about them. You know how when you click on a point, all the point information comes up on the screen for you?
Yeah, if you double click the point, you get the little boxes where you can fill out the.
Well, a lot of times I don't. I double click on it and nothing happens. Uh, so I'm curious about that. The other thing I'm curious about is I was using, there's a command on there about computing offsets, and there's one where you can pick a line for direction
Yeah.
and then give it the distance. I picked the line, and for example, if I'm picking a lot, it picks the whole lot when I pick the line, and then frequently goes in the wrong direction.
Okay. That's because that is a polyline. That is not. It's not just the edge. It's not that one segment of that polyline when you're picking it. Okay.
Okay.
And the direction that it goes in is the direction that line was drawn in. Now, if that's the wrong direction, there's another command you have to run that reverses the direction of it. There's
Okay.
also another command that if it doesn't start at the right place, like maybe you're starting up in the northwest corner, it was the starting point, and you want that, and that basically behaves like it's station 0 + 0 0.
Yeah.
But and it you so there's another command that allows you to choose a different starting point for that, for that polyline. So
Okay.
um,
Maybe the next time we're in Carlson, we can go over that real quick.
I think what we should do is let's get a couple of those situations like you've got, and we'll go from there. I don't know.
Did you get the plat requirements in Jefferson County that I sent you the other
I
day?
did. I did, yes. And so what I'd like to do with those is we can start work on, and I can start putting it together for you, a template that you should be using that will help have all of these things set up for you every time if you start a new job. You
And
know,
I have in my mind a bunch of layers that I know I'll need. I
right.
probably don't have all of them thought of,
Okay.
but I know of probably a dozen that I know I'll need.
Yeah. If they do not have a required list of layers for you to use, some of our local agencies here do, like the DOT and the Alcosan, the County Sanitary Authority. They have specific layer names that we're supposed to use. But if they don't, a good place to start is with those ones that Carlson supplies that come out of what they call the NCS, or the National CAD Standards.
Mm-hmm. That's the
And
one they have in their template.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
some of those. And they have like V dash prefixes and C dash prefixes for the layer names. The V meaning is from the survey; those are all existing things, and then the C are civil. Those are your typical proposed things. Um, they would also have A dash for architecture, S dash for structural, E dash for electrical, um, H for HVAC, M for mechanical. So those are just prefixes that help divide that up. And, a bunch of eggheads got together several years back and decided to codify this into a national CAD standard, which really is nothing more than a guideline. But in any
Right.
case, um, well,
Have
listen,
you thought any more about the drafting classes?
yes, again, I haven't got it down to numbers yet, but I think we can certainly do this. And maybe what we can do, Mike, is just maybe look at it as a retainer situation of, instead of this, I mean, there's no way you could afford uh, to pay for, 40 years worth of over the shoulder guidance, just because that's just not not going to be very efficient and very effective. But if we could do it maybe like, every Friday afternoon or every Thursday morning or whatever that we happen to be, that we could always just set aside an hour or two, or maybe 2 days a week, or three to get started and stuff.
To get started, probably more is better because I'm going to have to be drafting some plats here pretty quickly.
Yes, yes. So we'll get things, really moving up, and then maybe just do it as a weekly check-in. Okay, so
You have a
got-
PayPal account.
I do. Yes.
That might be the way for me to transfer money to you
Okay.
instead of using
Again,
credit.
yeah. I wouldn't worry about that. You could, if you wanted to write a check and mail it. I don't have any problem with that at all.
Okay.
But it's just, I don't want to. You know, I mean, you know what it was like. When I get like 100 and some bucks an hour as my billing rate, but I can't do that as a training class. That would sort of defeat the whole purpose of what you're trying to do. Um, so, as what I'm saying, if it's not something that's going to take up, my time full time to where I'm putting other work on hold to do it, then I can do it at as substantial a discount as I can afford here. Um, so I'll keep it as affordable as I can possibly keep it for you. Um,
Okay, that sounds fair.
just as long as you don't ever tell anybody else, Mike, because I can't,
I
I,
won't.
it's not a sustainable model. I wouldn't
But
be able to
if
do
we
that.
could, if possible, I'd like to get started on that this week.
Okay. All
Not
right.
well, not this. This is Friday, obviously not this week. But
Right. So, okay. Yeah, let's plan on that. And trying to think of, well, we'll be reconvening on Tuesday. Then maybe we can pick up the next day. I can't do it Monday. I don't think, let me check real quick. Um, if I can find it here. Let's see, there we go. So yeah, so Monday I can't, Tuesday is good. Yeah, so anything Monday, anything except for Monday and except for Friday afternoon, I think we can just carry on with that. So I'll tell you what I'll do then is before we reconvene on Tuesday, I'll try to have a game plan uh, in
okay,
place and see what we get. All righty.
okay, that sounds good. I'll
All
see
right.
you Tuesday. You have a good weekend.
You do the same. And sorry, that's only going to leave you 17 minutes to get cocktail hour in. So bottoms up, brother.
Okay, thanks.
All right. See you.
Yep.